I'm going to tell you why Florida State's 2023 success is going to lead to long-term success as well.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, and today's episode is going to be all about long-term success for the Noles, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It is a great show to talk about a lot of different things, and it is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Make sure that you create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime. Now, there are 5 areas that I'm going to discuss, and they're all pretty straightforward. Play calling, the transfer portal, high school recruiting, definitely on the rise. Evaluations, that's a big box situation for many different areas for the Noles. And finally, just the respect. Florida State has went from a program that might be ranked to a team that is now in the top 5 of the college football playoff ranking. So let's just start off with this right off the bat. Number 1, play calling. Let's use last week's game as a great barometer. Wake Forest comes out, white box. I'm looking at it. I'm saying, they're just going to run the ball. Nope. Florida State found individual mismatches that they wanted to hit, plus still getting the ball to Keon, even with players out of the lineup, and teams might shift their attention to him. And they did. They still found ways to get him the ball. Number 1, Norvell and his staff just do a good job of the specific play calls and route combinations to do it. Number 2, they set them up for running plays later in the game. And then number 3, they just out-athleted them. We have better guys. Even though you're tending to go towards a certain direction with just playing off, we're going to nickel and dime you, and our athletes are going to get it done. Hats off. And that's a great example of Florida State's ability to find little niches with their play calling to dissect another team. And they've done it on both sides of the ball, but that's the easiest one to use. And most people really like to talk about offense. So I'm going to use that as a really good sticking point. Here's another way to look at it. Earlier this year against Duke, there were times where the Devils, they've got a good front, no question. Carter in the middle, NFL player. Florida State still stuck to their guns, slowly worked their way into the game. Nickel and dime here or there with some passing, run the ball, wore down the front, rotated running backs. Then what happened in the third quarter, especially with the last 5 minutes of it, and in the fourth quarter? That same game plan that Norvell and his staff had broke through. They hit big plays, and they killed Duke in the last 20 minutes of the game. It was just completely destruction. That's how you win games when the talent is at least somewhat similar. Florida State's a couple touchdowns better talent-wise than Duke, at least, but they made no doubt with how they called the plays and maximized that talent. And it's a lot of respect for it. Third example here, and this is something that just shows development. Before, Jordan Travis was a consistent passer, and teams would know that Jordan is likely to take off more. They still found ways to scheme him opportunities where he was one-on-one with a guy that wasn't as gifted as him. Jordan is not much fun to bring down, and even when he's being tackled, as evidenced by the game against Wake Forest, he grinded out a few runs. He's a guy that if you don't get him immediately, man, he'll make you look bad and make you a YouTube moment. Florida State put him in positions to be successful. Play calling, play calling, play calling. It's why fans bitch about it so much. They know if the key guys get the ball in the right scenarios, they can change games. Florida State's play calling has done that, and just seeing it over the last couple of years has been important. But this year mostly is why I'm saying they're going to have long-term success. They find different guys every week for Jordan to throw to hand off to, different kinds of screens, different formations can be the reason, but sometimes they just use different players in the same kind of formation, and they kill teams. Execution, obviously, you got to give credit to the players, but the play calling for Florida State is tremendous. Second thing, we've talked about it numerous times on this show. The transfer portal is a major reason Florida State is going to have long-term success based on the 23 season. They've got a combination of guys who have been here multiple years from the transfer portal that have fit in, as well as guys that have just come in immediately and made an impact. Let's use the obvious. Keon Coleman. I mean, everybody wanted him, but that doesn't mean you're going to know how to use him. That goes back to play calling, but it also shows they found a guy that would fit in Tallahassee with this roster, and the players accepted him. A lot of teams that get a great player, they don't want a guy, some of the other guys, because they want to get the ball. This team is adapted. That's partially for the players. I mean, just give them respect for doing it. But more importantly, you got to get them in. So that's everybody in the administration, getting everything done on the back end, academics and all that other stuff, and making sure the coaching staff all know what they want to do with him so the fit happens quickly. You needed him right away against LSU, obviously. He scored a couple touchdowns, and it was the key for Florida State beating LSU in many different ways. The portal has also helped the defense in many different aspects, but obviously Verse is the easiest one to discuss. You want to talk about long-term success? Florida State taking flyers on kid? Well, are they really? Verse was from Albany. Now, he had more than one offer, but Florida State went after him. They knew what they wanted. They got him. They developed him. They put him in a situation to win. Again, partially that's play calling, being in the right defense, right schemes and all that. But Florida State made it happen. Again, it fit in. They knew what they wanted. And there's just a ton of others. I picked two easy ones because they've been so successful, but it's all over the defense. Ventrell Cypress, he had a really good game against Wake Forest. I was watching him quite a bit in this last opportunity. He comes down from Virginia, a team that, let's be honest, until here just the last couple of weeks, really hasn't had much success in quite a while. It could have been easy to pass on him and say, well, we're not sure. He had some stats, but how good is he really? Florida State brought him in, and he's been an impact player. They know how to evaluate the transfer portal, in my opinion, as well as any team in the country, and the numbers bear it out because they went from an okay program to where some of these kids that were in the portal that came in the year or so before, combined with Cypress, combined with Coleman, etc., it put the Noles into a top 5 position by pretty much anybody's standard. And again, they're ranked 4th in the initial college football playoff poll. That's pretty impressive. Number 3 on this, and this is a fun one for me. This is a stat that I like to talk about, the numbers in high school recruiting. Florida State for quite a while has been down by Florida State standards. Not anymore. I got a couple ways to look at this, like KJ Bolden, Armando Blunt, Charles Lester, Chroma Hawk, Landon Thomas, Cam Davis, Jonathan Daniels, Wayne McCoy, Mekhi Danzig. There's a whole bunch of guys. I can go through most of them. Almost every guy they have out of like the top, say, 15 kids in the class, give or take, they not only have Florida State offers. These are like Georgia, Florida, Miami, Texas A&M, Clemson, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame. They are offers from all over. They're beating teams that matter again. When you start getting your kids, and they've already shown they can adapt talent in a short period of time with the transfer portal, well, it's easier with high school because you get longer to be with that player. So, of course, that's a bonus. No question, Florida State is going up based on this, and their long-term trajectory is very high. This is a top 5 class. They backed it up on the field with off-the-field recruiting success. It's not even in question. Here's the biggest thing with it. As it relates specifically to high school recruiting, and I guess we could put JUCO recruiting in there in case they get one, there's a situation where this class isn't even over. We'll see what else they can add. You never know. It's only early November. Recruiting does not really conclude until December 20th for the first signing day. The second one will be the first Wednesday in February. You might sign 1 or 2 kids. But recruiting still got quite a ways to go. Florida State could still move up. Who knows? But again, they're beating Georgia and Florida and key opponents for top kids. So not only are they getting talent, Florida State is taking talent away from prime contenders that they can end up playing either in regular season, obviously like Florida, or in the playoffs. Team like Georgia down the road. Beating Georgia for recruits in their backyard, taking kids away from them that they really wanted, like Davis, KJ Bolden, etc. That is not easy. Landon Thomas, all these kids Kirby Smart and his group really wanted. Nothing says upward trajectory like beating the 2-time national champions in recruiting in their backyard. That's what Florida State's done. It's just fact. So keep in mind that this is a very good trend for the Noles. All right. This show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and check it out. I was actually just on it, and it brought me back to an opportunity I had to get tickets, and I spent way too much money a little less than a year ago. Won't go into all the specifics, but they've got a flash deal right now. I was looking at the Florida State at Florida game. Just curious, $161 for some pretty good seats. It's about 10% off. It's just random. You go on the app, you type in the name of the team, and in this case, obviously Florida State. You can get basketball, you can get football, you can do hockey, you can do a million different sports, but I was looking for football. I found what I was looking for in less than 30 seconds. That's just fact. So from my personal experience, it's pretty easy to use, and I wish I would have used it last year because I would have saved a little bit of money. Last second ticket deals, like I said, the flash deal, they got one going on right now for the Florida State game. It's easy to find them, and you're going to be able to see your tickets. Like you click on it, and it'll pull up a picture. This is where the seat is. This is the view of the game from where you will be seating. Straightforward. Make sure that you check that out because Gametime is a great app. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Gametime is a great example of what's coming up in college football, by the way, because of all the great games. Florida State. Obviously, I picked that one because it's a great rivalry. I've enjoyed watching it my whole life. And to that point, it's about evaluations. Those programs didn't get to where they are today, historically speaking, by making bad evaluations. And this, all the points I'm making today is the most broad because it can be used in a lot of ways. I'm going to use most of this segment just on this point because it's fascinating to me, and it's why football is so important. And it's also why, again, Florida State's trajectory is up. This podcast is about why Florida State is flat out headed an upward trajectory even after the season. And I know they're going to lose a lot of players, but there's a lot of good things that are going on at Florida State. And long-term, they're going to be pretty darn good. Here's the deal. Evaluation, you think, well, it's just high school. No. High school, JUCO, and transfer, and all of the following as well. After you bring a young man onto your campus, what do you do with it? Well, he's just going to play this position. No, that's not how it works. Bowden, Jimmy Johnson, any of the guys that you can think of, Spurrier, that have been big-time coaches down south, definitely Saban, they take kids that are raw athletes. Maybe they played quarterback in high school because they had to. Sometimes they stay there, sometimes they don't. Like Charlie Ward, a lot of people thought, even Bowden initially thought that he may not play quarterback because he was such a good athlete. Obviously, he played point guard in the NBA after playing at Thomas County Central in Georgia, and then for the Noles, he could have played about 5 spots at Florida State. Receiver, running back, slot, free safety, whatever. He was really good, but obviously quarterback worked out. Well, that's the key here. Florida State not only puts the guys in the right spot, and they're doing that, but let's use the secondary as one prime example for the trajectory. They're moving guys around in spots that I didn't necessarily see, but they've been successful. Thomas, the sophomore, big kid, played a lot of safety in high school at Niceville High. It's a really good program in the Panhandle. Probably got about the best game day atmosphere there is. Kid that was hyped up and recruited heavily. A lot of people thought he was going to go to Florida. Florida State out-recruited him, and he came in and he played quite a bit last year, and he's played different roles for the Noles. But he can play bump coverage even though he's 6'2 plus, and he can play off coverage, etc. They found a niche for him. Most people would have just thrown him back at safety because of his length and said that's probably best for him long-term. Let's just do that. Florida State's found a different way. That's as good an example as I can think of, because anytime you have a 6'1", or even like if you can get a 6'2" corner on your field, man, that changes your defense. It changes your defense. Florida State has done those kinds of things consistently. Here's another one. I mentioned Fentrell Cypress a little bit ago. Okay, well, he's a pure corner. There's no question about that. But does he always play the same way? Florida State has moved him in the sense of, okay, sometimes you're going to play press, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're going to attack, sometimes you're not. He's smart enough, he's experienced enough, he's talented enough to take on different roles. They've allowed him to do it. Sometimes it's the forest for the trees here. He's good. Let him roll. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. He's a darn good football player. Next game, you get a chance to watch Cypress at corner. If the camera's on him for time, check him out. He is really good if you haven't already. That's a great example. Moving to offense, the thing that has fascinated me the most, let's use Darian Williamson. He's only got like 8 catches on the year, but they'll go to him in a clutch situation, just like they would somebody that's got 20 plus catches. Florida State believes in who they coach up, who they evaluate, and how they use them. In the first half, they went to him this past week. Again, he doesn't even have 10 catches. Road game against a team that's had success against you. No fear. That means you trust in what you do. You put players in position. If that does not say long-term trajectory, we know what's going on, we're going to get it done, I'm not sure what it is. Also, one last point on this segment. When you think about evaluations as a whole, one of the biggest things that I hear this all the time, college coaches will run into guys like me on a sideline at a high school game. Who do you like? You know, the basic stuff about just generic recruiting and evaluation comes up. That's fine. But I'll ask about roster management. How's the team coming together? Those awkward off the field conversations that happen all the time that we can't really write about, podcast about, because it's disclosed information for private only. Well, here's the overview of it. How the team comes together and worrying about what happens when a team is not in session, when they're not at practice, they're not with the coaches. Florida State's getting guys that are buying in. That you could argue that is the most important thing. Bringing kids in that are for the team. Yeah, they want to make it to the NFL and all that stuff, but they want to make it and they want to win along the way. It's not one or the other. It's both. You always want kids that want to go to the NFL. That never changes. Florida State's getting guys that are buying in to be at Florida State. That is evaluation to the umpteenth degree. And I could go on in different ways how evaluation works, but that character aspect of it is huge. There are a couple of teams, and I won't throw them under the bus, but I know right now there are some character issues that are causing losses. Florida State's undefeated in the top 5. What does that say about their long-term trajectory when they're using more or less the same plan as some of these other teams, with the portal being a major part of it in particular? And these other teams are having portal guys come in and out almost like monthly. It's just churning in and out. Florida State's evaluation for these kids is tremendous. Not maybe. It's tremendous. And they deserve respect for it. That's something to think about because not everybody has that luxury. On the other side, we're going to talk about all of the things that I just mentioned in respect sense. And I want to share a few personal thoughts in regards to it because quite honestly, you got to get to a certain point before you earn that respect. And Florida State certainly has. And it's pretty impressive, to be quite honest with you. All right. This segment is going to be brought to you by PrizePicks. It is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You're just going to pick 2 to 6 players and a number over or under. Here's an example on something. Florida State obviously is going to play Pittsburgh this week. Give you a hint. Florida State is playing a team that is coming off a shellacking 58-7 loss to Notre Dame. They're coming back home to play the Noles. They're probably not happy about that. I think Florida State's going to score a lot. I think they're going to just completely drill them. There's a really good chance that I would look at this game as an opportunity for some big numbers on Florida State players individually, or if you want to talk about offensive numbers collectively, yards, total points, etc. I would go over on most of those. You do what you want, but you can go and do different things. You can do teams, you can do players, you can do college, you can do pro, NFL, hockey, whatever it may be. PrizePick even offers a reboot policy. So if your player gets hurt in the first half, it gets rebooted, you're good to go. So make sure that you check it out. It is very easy to use. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use Locked On College for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first match up to $100. All right. Now, this third and final area we're going to go over here is a culmination of the four and one other thing that I hinted at a little bit ago. Notice that I mentioned the college playoff poll has them at 4. The AP poll has had them in the top 5. You have to earn respect going into a season. And pretty much everybody had Florida State in their top 10, top 12 coming in, but most top 10. They immediately went up when they beat LSU. They even jumped some teams. That's respect. The people that do this, some are obviously not as involved as they probably should be. There's a lot of talk about AP voters, etc. But that playoff committee, that's a different kind of deal. For them to be in the top 4 from the outset, and for Florida State to not have played a major game in the last couple of weeks, out of sight, out of mind, is a great sign for the long-term success of this program. Again, trajectory up. That's what this podcast is about. Don't make any questions about it. Here's another great sign. Undefeated 8-0 Florida State is number 4, and they haven't even played a huge game in the last couple of weeks. Florida State is trending in the right direction. The outside media, many of which don't live in Florida or tired of all the Florida schools for years, still have the Noles inside the top 5. That's a great sign. So overall, I just don't see how people wouldn't think Florida State is not a long-term trajectory. They may not be dominant next year. I don't know. They're obviously losing a lot of really good players, and we got to see who turns pro early, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, the recruiting has been good at the high school level to a point now where they're back to being an elite recruiting team for high school. That's huge. The evaluation process is incredible. Norvell and his staff have done a great job with play calling and individualizing plays that fit certain guys differently and maximize their talent. We're talking about an opportunity with everything that they do with the transfer portal, from the evaluation, how good they are, how do they fit, all of those things together. It's why the media has put them in this spot to have a chance to even go to the college football playoff. They've earned it. Don't worry about somebody that, some Gator fan you run into, whatever it is. Hey, you're not going to be dominant every single year. I get it. But long-term trajectory for Florida State is very good. And I mean that by top 5, top 10 standards. If they're outside the top 10 in a year, it's probably because they had a quarterback injury or something really goofy happen. Outside of that, we're going to see Florida State pretty much in the top 10 moving forward in the Mike Norvell era. He's earned that respect, and quite frankly, the program has overall. It's not just him. I mean, it's the staff, the administration, everything together is working together as one machine. That's not easy. And again, it deserves respect. So up for the Noles, got to give them props for everything they've done. So even after this year, Florida State's going to be around at the top of the rankings. With that, please like this podcast. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share it and comment on YouTube and anywhere else. We would appreciate it. Give a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, and all the other places. Everybody have a great day. Thank you much.